Welcome to the Chadburn Show, brought to you by M. Chad Baldwin. Welcome to the Chadburn Show. I am your host, M. Chadburn, and on this episode today, we are doing a very special self-isolation, social distancing, COVID-19 pandemic special, where we are hosting from, obviously, Zoom, with a guest host today, where we'll be going over the NFL, a redraft of the 2017 draft, and kind of just catching up as we're all very much stuck at home. As you can see, I am not in my usual studio. I do not have the wonderful, the great Julien Ramvoiset behind me because we are both isolated into our own homes. But I've tried to get as best a setup as I could here, kind of get back at home, kind of as the new trend we're seeing everywhere of people getting into their office spaces at home and trying to create a show from really nothing right now. So I hope you guys will enjoy what we have for you today. I know we've been gone for the past 2 weeks. It has been sad, folks. I got to say, I've missed my time coming on and getting to talk to all of you. However, we did get an opportunity as a Chadburn Show. I was on two great podcasts, the Jay Stevens Show, as well as the Two Black Boys podcast, getting to talk both NBA, redrafting there, talking Sixers, Eagles, kind of everything we cover on the show. So we do have some content out for you. I do recommend going to listen to it because those are two great podcasts. Had a great host from Joel Jay Stevens and then Davey. They do a great job. Love the show in general. But give it a listen and what we were on if you're missing us for the last 2 weeks. We are going to continue. I think we're going to have kind of a theme like this. Obviously, as long as we're stuck in these self-isolation zones, we're going to be running the special episodes here and there that might not be the full, might not be the same structure you are used to, but we're trying to make sure we have at least some content for you out there. So we will be doing that next week. I'll be bringing on another guest to discuss the Eagles and looking at our all-decade team. And as well as I will be on a show tomorrow. Do not know when it airs, but I will get you the details there, of course. Stay tuned on the Instagram and our Facebook page to get all the details of when our other episodes are coming out. But for now, without further ado, let me introduce the guest of the show today. He is a friend of the show. We've had him on several times. Our senior correspondent from New York, Dillon Fields. Dillon, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Chad. Thank you for having me. Well, as well as I could be doing given the circumstances.
Right. I guess we'll jump right into it. I got to ask, how are you doing in New York City? I know it is mayhem there, kind of one of the hot spots in the United States. So I got to ask both, how are you doing in just normal sanity living there and being self-isolated? And two, not having any sports really to help you cope through any of it.
So New York definitely stands out above the rest in terms of how the pandemic has hit us. So it's definitely tough for us here. But, we've been socially isolating, staying indoors as much as possible. And unfortunately, not being able to enjoy sports during this time makes it all the more difficult. But that's something that we can all relate with. No matter where you are in the world, you're probably without your favorite sport, unless you are a fan of something abstract that is still going on right now, which I don't believe is anything. But yeah, it's been tough to be isolated and not have the saving grace of sports, which I usually do have. So.
That's what I asked. So then what are you spending your time doing then? I mean, obviously, I believe you're still working, so luckily you're working remotely, but how are you spending that free time?
I feel like I don't even remember what goes on, day by day. I lose myself in the boredom of sitting around the house, but just a lot of catching up on shows and movies that I had on my to-do list.
Any top movies, right? I would say any top movies right now?
I don't know. It's tough because nothing is coming out right now because of all these delays. So I feel like I've already run through. I'm going through old movies that I kind of missed. So I watched Hacksaw Ridge recently, and I hadn't watched that in 1917. Those are like the war movies that I hadn't gotten down to, but I managed to cross them off the list recently.
Have you watched Tiger King yet?
I have watched Tiger King. Yeah, I feel like it's kind of like a rite of passing. For us now, so we kind of have to watch, especially as Americans, given that this is, featuring the best Americans, right? I mean, this is you have to watch it, right? So
100%. I mean, it's been incredible to see kind of the growth of, I would say, the Tiger King show. how popular it's become. And then on top of that, I would say it's one of the best shows for memes. So you can really see that it's just spread like wildfire on social media because it's so memeable. It's incredible.
It's definitely tailor-made for 2020.
Oh,
The year of the meme.
absolutely. Yeah, we jumped into it. We started and we did not stop. I at first thought I might not like it because I was like, this is maybe a little too much white trash for my liking. However, it clearly sucked me in. That was a fast. It just kept changing and changing throughout. I was shocked by the final episode.
Yeah, it definitely catches you by surprise. I mean, the first episode, I was thinking, well, this can't be that exciting. I mean, we have
Yep.
just a couple of people. Was it in Florida? Where was it? It's somewhere
He's
down south.
Oklahoma. Carol Baskins, is Florida, and then you have Doc Annell is South Carolina.
Okay, wow. So you're
So
definitely well read and all.
I'm into it.
I didn't think it could be as thrilling as it was. I mean, that story kind of had all the necessary pieces to it. It's a great story to it. So.
Oh, it really did. It was absolutely crazy. Pivoting then away from Netflix. I know that's basically what we're all doing right now. Netflix. I also bought Madden 20 recently, so I'm really fully invested into that. It's been
wow.
By the way, highly recommend it. Great story mode, great Ultimate Team. Everything's great about it. Loving it.
Okay.
But Matt, what I will say is there was at least some sports news. I remember several episodes ago before I went on my hiatus as we try to figure out how to run the show during this time, kind of special times. I discussed obviously Tom Brady and the Bucs. So I need Dillon your initial reaction. Tom Brady going to the Bucs. Did you see it happening? Did you think the Bucs? And I mean, what are they now the favorites in the NFC South?
So I guess I'll start with, did I see it coming? I mean, as you heard the reports over the last few months of just, at first it was saying, oh, this is a possibility. And then we transitioned to, there might be some friction between Belichick and Brady. And maybe this is not a possibility, but a probability. And kind of seemed like as we transgressed, towards the beginning of free agency, it seemed like it was almost inevitable that this was going to happen. So when it first came down, I wasn't necessarily shocked. But if you had asked me a year ago, what are the odds that Tom Brady leaves New England, I would have said less than 1%. I mean, it was in the same way that I would never have seen Derek Jeter leaving the Yankees. I mean, just seeing Tom Brady, who is the face of the Patriots and obviously had so much success there with Belichick, I just could never imagine that, especially this late in his career, that he would opt to go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I actually think it's an intriguing fit with the Buccaneers because Tom Brady has something that he hasn't had the last couple of years in New England, which is a great set of weapons. They have, obviously Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, who are just two stud wide receivers who would be number one wide receivers on any team. And then you have O.J. Howard, who seems like he has some untapped potential in the tight end position. And we know that Tom Brady loves his tight end with Gronkowski and before that Hernandez. But it just seems like this could be a good recipe for Tom Brady if all the talent on the Buccaneers comes together and they realize their potential, which they haven't in recent years. Yeah. I'm intrigued. I think it's a good fit if he's going to leave. But that being said, you think that with the team that the Patriots have, that maybe they would have wanted to go and make sure they kept it together for another year or two. So I think he might have had a better chance winning with that defense over there in New England.
I would say the same. It was interesting. I broke it down. I remember that episode, and I was looking at it. They have some pieces on that team, whether it be Ndamukong Suh or I'm trying to remember. I think it was name Shakrif. I gotta get the whole list of the defense.
Griffin. Not Griffin.
No, Griffin's on there. No,
Barrett,
Shaquille Barrett. Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Shaquille Barrett. Devin White's also on there. Vitae Vea. But the shocking thing that I saw was that, that defense last year was giving up an average of almost 500 yards a game. And you're never going to win if that's how your defense is playing. But I will say that I think that the defense in the Bucs looked worse last year than they really are, mainly because you had someone like Winston, who was just constantly turning the ball over. I mean, when you have the same amount of touchdowns as you have interceptions through the whole season, that's terrible. So,
no, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that defense could get better. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're NFC South favorites yet. Obviously, there are the Saints, who are going to be a big contender for that. But I do got to say, I think Brady chose talent over just kind of going to LA and just ending his career quietly. I feel like he's actually trying to go and do something and possibly take a team deep into the playoffs.
Yeah, I think this decision was made very much on the football side of it. I don't think this was a career decision like Tom Brady going somewhere where he could work on his media career after
Right.
retiring. I think that Tom Brady is committed to winning a Super Bowl elsewhere. I think that his biggest motivation, apart from getting paid what he's worth, which I mean he hasn't been paid what he's worth throughout his career. He's always taken 8 to 12 to 15 in the league salary,
Significant pay
which
cuts to
is
help that team.
yeah, exactly. And so I think he was ready to get paid, his due. And I think the Patriots were saying, you're 43 years old. We're going to put our money elsewhere at this point, rather
Right.
than pay you the enormous sum that the Buccaneers did. But I don't think he did it for money. I think that he did it for the talent that was there in Tampa Bay.
Right.
And so I think it's a good decision for him once you remove him from the Patriots. But that being said, I mean, the Patriots have enough weapons to compete next year, and with Belichick and that defense, you think that he would want to make another run with the Patriots. But
I agree. I think there must have been something between Belichick and Brady. I mean,
mhm.
clearly it just wasn't working the way it had. And, I got to give him credit to taking a pick like moving to Tampa Bay, especially with his wife and everyone who definitely wants to be in LA. Big move. I was impressed. I'm not a big Brady fan because of all the ass whoopings I've taken from him over the years. But in general, I respected the move to try and go and at least win somewhere. So I'd love to see kind of how that plays out. I think it should be fascinating, to say the least.
And it's interesting because he's also like the polar opposite in terms of the type of player that he is at this point of his career than Jameis Winston.
Oh, yeah.
Winston, who is an explosive player, but also is like the worst game manager and is not able to be safe with the ball and to have productive
Right.
drives that don't risk ending up in a turnover, which he had. 30 picks is an unbelievable number to have. Bad quarterbacks don't throw 30 interceptions. I mean, it's
Not even.
spectacularly bad to throw 30. And the fact that he was so talented that he was able to, throw 30 touchdowns as well. I mean, it shows you that it's in there for him and that someone should take a chance on him. He has a chance of having a successful career. But
Over 5,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, and then the whole problem is that if you just remove the interceptions, that is an elite quarterback
right.
stat line. And then the
Mm-hmm.
problem is you add the 30 interceptions, you go, what the hell
Yeah.
happened? And the team missed the playoffs.
Right.
And on top of that, your two wide receivers are over 1,000 yards each. It's unheard of. So I really think that having a quarterback, Tom Brady, who doesn't throw interceptions like that, and especially with Arians, who is a offensive-minded coach,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think you could find a very fascinating kind of storyline coming out of the Tampa Bay. And, I think it'd be a feel-good story to see them go deep in the playoffs. I'd love to see it happen.
And the defense might be the biggest beneficiary out of this whole
Yeah,
thing because, I mean,
of
like you
course.
said, the 30 interceptions puts them in a terrible position, not only in that drive where they have to now defend a short field, they also have to be on the field a lot more. So it could just
Yep.
drain the defense where at the end of games, they're just demoralized. If you, on the fourth interception, I mean, what point do you just say, like, what am I doing out here? As soon as we get the ball back to our offense, it's going to be
Yeah.
a pick. So,
Well, I mean, coming from a Eagles perspective, we had that with Chip Kelly. Like, you always had these defenses that you
yeah.
thought were going to be good because on paper they look great, but they're exhausted halfway through the season because in his instance, he's running the offense so quickly that if he scores or it's a turnover, they're barely on there. So the defense is constantly having to play. Yeah, so I agree with that. I think the effect of allowing the defense to rest more obviously always works out in your favor. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that will give the Bucs a huge advantage as they go on through the rest of the season.
I agree.
Now we talk Tom Brady and the Bucs. I think the next thing I want to hit with you, since you are a Giants fan, the offseason has still happened. Coronavirus has not stopped players from being signed, have not stopped GMs from going out there and trying to get more talent to build their team. So I'll go to you. With the Giants this offseason, how are you grading them? Do you think they've done enough to compete in the NFC East, or are we still trying to find more pieces to fit the puzzle?
Well, the Giants have a lot of holes, so they're always searching for more pieces to fit the puzzle. That'll be through the draft. I mean, obviously, the draft will be important at plugging the biggest holes that they have remaining. I mean, namely, you have a huge hole at the left or right tackle spot.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll still need to address that in the draft and obviously have various other needs. But I think that they had a productive offseason. And in terms of them competing, I don't really think that the offseason will be the biggest component to determining their fate next year. I think that really depends on the growth of Daniel Jones and this
Right.
offense. You have a new offensive scheme, a new coach, new coordinator. You really need to make sure that there's a system built that'll help Daniel Jones thrive, because that's really what matters most. But I think what they did, mainly addressing the defense in in free agency. I think that was pretty successful. James Bradbury was the consensus second best cornerback in this free agent class, and I think that they got him for a reasonable deal. I mean, obviously he got paid a premium, but that's just what you get when you're signing players in free agency as opposed to signing your homegrown talent. And then Blake Martinez, I wasn't a huge fan of this signing. He's just not a very exciting player, but he fills a hole. And I think that it's a good signing overall. But I think that for the Giants offseason, you have to give it a few months or a year to really see how these players fit within the new scheme.
That's fair. So obviously we're looking at Danny Dimes Jones and how he is going to grow into the next season. I would like to see that growth too. I think definitely I was very surprised. I was on part of the bandwagon that was criticizing the crap out of Gettleman for making that pick of Daniel Jones that early. But, as we saw in the season, he does have some arm talent. He can obviously connect some drives together. So we'll see how it goes. I think from my standpoint, I still think that the NFC East is going to come down to the Cowboys and the Eagles, and I'm giving the edge to my Philadelphia Eagles because I think they've addressed the defensive issues that they had, which is cornerback, and that they're going to with Slay. And they also had several backups that I think are going to fit nicely into there. Unfortunately, we lost Jenkins, but I think Jalen Mills will be perfect at safety, and it's one thing I've been saying for years because he is too slow at cornerback. So I'm going to give Eagles the edge in the NFC title race. How say you?
I mean, listen, I might agree with the Eagles there. I think it's a toss-up between the Eagles and the Cowboys. If I had to bet from an objective standpoint right now, I think I would say the Eagles. But that being said, it's neck and neck with the Cowboys, and I think this division really is anybody's to win. I would not be surprised if the Giants won next year, and I totally expect them to compete for the division.
Yes.
I don't think any of these teams are dominant. Yeah, and I think really with the Giants and the Redskins, who have been the bottom two for the last few years, it really depends on the growth of their quarterbacks. I mean, who knows? Yeah. I mean, Haskins didn't have a great year last year, but would it be absolutely shocking if, with all that talent that he comes out next year and has a breakthrough and the Redskins win? I mean, he has like an RG3 type season when the Redskins were last competitive, and that was many years ago. But anything could happen this year, and I think that it's going to be an interesting season. I wouldn't be surprised if any of the four teams win.
Right. I think for the Eagles to really try and pull away, they'd have to have a very successful NFL draft. I think they have to get wide receivers. And if they use the draft and take advantage of the deep wide receiver pool that we have, then I think that's where you start seeing the Eagles take a slight advantage, mainly just because I think the Cowboys are tying up too much money on a few players that haven't necessarily will, I think, produce huge numbers and be the overall reason they win. I think the Cowboys lost some talent on defense. So I think the Eagles might take an edge. But I do agree. I think my bigger fear, even though Cowboys have the talent and are the perennial people later at the end of the season close to winning the title, I think the Giants should be very competitive in that. They clearly have a talented offense. And if they can get their defense going, I don't see why not. I'm less optimistic on the Redskins than you are because I don't think Haskins is going to be the quarterback of the future there. And I also think as long as Dan Snyder's the owner, that Redskins team will find a way to lose. But I would like to say, I don't think this is going to be NFC least at least this year. I think the NFC East will be competitive again.
Well, the good thing as a Redskins fan, for those Redskins fans out there, there is very little chance that the Redskins are able to blow this first pick of the draft, second overall, but their first pick. Chase Young out there, who is a game changer and a potential, Hall of Fame Redskin at his peak. This is something that they really can't screw up. And as a Giants fan, if they do screw up and let him fall to us, then that would be ideal.
That's me. All right. So real quick question, because I do believe that there is a chance the Redskins screw this up because of the Dan Snyder effect. If, for example, the Redskins were willing to take all of a sudden a risk on a Tua and go for a quarterback and kind of replace Dwayne Haskins, you as a Giants fan, of course, would want Chase Young to fall to you.
Well, absolutely, and I think that if that were to happen, what they would have to do is come up with some sort of trade with the Lions, because I think that the Lions would be willing, because I think we can all agree that Chase Young is the most talented player in this draft, regardless of position. But the Lions, I mean, after losing Slay, and they really need help in the secondary. And Jeff Okudah is an incredible player, great cornerback, lockdown corner, who the Giants would not be interested in now.
Right.
because they signed Bradbury and they have invested a lot of first-round picks in the last few years in defensive backs. But if they could, come up with some small compensation to give the Lions to switch spots with them and grab Chase Young, I think that would be huge for the Giants, who still have not addressed their edge rusher need in free agency.
That's what I mean. Honestly, I think the Redskins could totally mess this all up. I think that it could be they could totally create a clusterfuck in this draft.
What a mess, though.
But I mean, wouldn't you expect it? I mean, that's the thing. And we know too many Redskins fans, and I don't think they would be surprised either if Dan Snyder or that organization messed up this draft.
No, they're the most pessimistic ones. They're probably bracing for a kicker at number 2 overall.
That's what I mean. Every year, there's something the Redskins do that just never makes sense. So I could see that happening. But I think that I am excited for the NFC East again to be competitive. And I think, I honestly at this point, I'm just looking forward to football. I've been reading literally right now Sal Paolantonio, ESPN reporter's book on the Eagles Super Bowl season, because I've just been burning through books. It's been kind of fun to relive, the 1 year of glory for us. But then I've also been rewatching football games. I think that's been a fun way to fill the void as well. Just kind of seeing it and trying to get a taste for football again. I'm so excited for it to happen.
It's funny. It feels like with the pandemic, I feel like I've been without football for so long that I realized like this has had no bearing on the football that we would have.
I know, right?
But just the lack of sports, I guess, makes that void feel all the more present.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so much more obvious when you don't have anything else to fill those gaps till the football season.
I think baseball would have started already. We have basketball playoffs coming up. I mean, there's
been so much going on right now.
A good time of season.
I know. It usually is peak. It's usually a championship type of season. Instead, I'm just sitting here letting my beard grow out and my hair get way too long, and then that's kind of what we're doing.
Yeah, right.
Everyone's hair. It's getting ridiculous, honestly. I the second we get out, barbers are going to be rolling.
Yeah, right. They're going to double the prices.
They're going to be so excited for that. All right, so I will now transition to the big idea we had for the show, is talking 2017 redraft. So to our listeners out there, to everyone who's listening in on how we're going to be setting this up, basically Dillon and I will be assuming the roles of GMs of 2 football teams. We are not going to be assuming as a traditional way of the teams that were in their slots in 2017, nor what they traded for. We're going to be looking at players that would best fit to make a team, to rebuild a team in order to have the most successful one out there in the NFL. So it's much more like a fantasy draft. We're going to take all the names of people that were there in the 2017 draft, and we're going to go through, each of us are going to alternate in picks and pick out how we would build the team. So we want to fill our quarterbacks, our offense, our defense, and so on. We will mention, obviously, who were picked in those picks in the first round. We're going to go to the top 15. But we want to have a little more fun with it, a little more free ball. And now that we know how these players have developed, looking at their overall talent and then trying to pick the best player available. So, again, this is with the 2017 player pool. I'm going to remind people of how that draft actually went down in the early rounds. So, Dillon, I think you remember Myles Garrett was the number 1 overall pick to the Browns. And the top 5 picks were Myles Garrett, Mitchell Trubisky, Solomon Thomas, Leonard Fournette, and Corey Davis. Those were the top 5 picks in 2017. Some notable names from 2017 include Patrick Mahomes, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Jamal Adams, T.J. Watt, Juju Smith-Schuster, Chris Godwin, and George Kittle, just to name a few. And they didn't make it into the top 5. So we're going to try and rectify that on building our own teams and going through that list. I have been kind enough to give Dillon the number 1 overall pick because I think that he needs it in order to really succeed here. So I'm going to pass it off to you, Dillon, in the 2017 Redraft Fantasy NFL Chadburn Show edition. Who is your number 1 pick and why?
So I can officially guarantee that I will be a perennial Super Bowl contender because my first pick is going to be Patrick Mahomes.
Of course.
Need I provide stats for Mahomes, who has been an absolute dynamo since entering the league. He did not play. I think he started 1 game in his rookie season in 2017, and then set the league on fire in 2018 with 50 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 50 touchdowns, unbelievable. And then a modest 26 touchdowns in 2019, but 5 interceptions and notably a Super Bowl title. So Mahomes is clearly going to have an incredible career. He is as much of a lock as you could be for the Hall of Fame before your second contract. And
Yep.
so I am very confident with him as my number 1 overall pick.
I think that's a great pick. Again, remind people, Myles Garrett went first overall to Browns, and I think it's fun to think about how the Browns would look right now if they have if they had Patrick Mahomes. And I also got to say, would they have screwed him up? I don't know. It's a possibility. The Browns could have done anything, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you would possibly screw up Mahomes, but it certainly is possible. And it's funny because the Browns, even when they make a good pick, which Garrett was, you read the top 5 picks. He is by far the most valuable player of the top 5 picks that were taken in the actual draft.
Yeah.
But it still will be looked at as a funny time to have the number 1 overall pick and to not have Patrick Mahomes, who came out in that draft. And to be fair, like, they certainly would have taken Trubisky or something if they had gone quarterback. Because, I mean, at the time, to be fair, Mahomes was ranked behind Trubisky in most mocks. So, I mean, I saw mocks that had the Giants taking him in the late in the first round. And so, I mean, to see him come off the board when he did at 11 when the Chiefs traded up for him with Buffalo, that was a huge surprise when it turns out that it was like a no-brainer at the time. I mean,
it is shocking, I will say. So I will go now to the number 2 pick, and the same thing. If we're going to build a team, we need a quarterback. So I'm going to go with a quarterback that, even though he won a national championship in college and had an amazing college career, was completely underlooked by a lot of the NFL teams out there and thinking he would not fit into the system. He has gone on to, of course, have 2 seasons of over 3,500 yards, with one of 4,000, one of 3,800, throwing 26 TDs both seasons, and 9 interceptions and 12. That is, of course, Deshaun Watson. I think he is an incredible talent to go to any type of team. I feel like his mobility fits well with the offenses we see today. And I think, again, was completely undervalued going into this draft.
Yeah, it was actually incredible because that was all the talk pre-draft, was that Watson was the kind of quarterback that would have a great college career like Tim Tebow and then end up in the NFL and not really fit. He would be a round peg for a square hole, and he just would not ever have that kind of career that would warrant him to be a high first-round pick, like I guess people thought Trubisky would be. But it turns out that Watson is everything that the Texans could have asked for, and he is certainly going to have a very successful career. But I still like my pick over yours.
I know. That's the thing. I will say Patrick Mahomes, it's amazing to see the deficit between the quarterbacks after that. But Deshaun Watson is a great fit, I think, to grow. Also the 757 rushing yards over the 3 years. And again, he didn't get to play his entire 27 year. Only played 7 games and still had over 1,500 yards throwing and 19 touchdowns in just 7 games played. So, clearly a talented young man who can get better. I will also, again, reiterate, the number 2 pick was Mitchell Trubisky. So the Chicago Bears, who wanted a quarterback, and I believe traded up for that position.
I'm pretty sure they give up 3 second-round picks to move
get
up
number 2.
one spot.
One spot for that.
Trubisky.
And think of that, because Patrick Mahomes was taken 10th overall, just looked it up, and Deshaun Watson was taken 12th. So both those quarterbacks were sitting there for the taking. So that would be my overall pick, obviously, Deshaun Watson. So then, Dillon, go to you. Now that we've gotten the quarterbacks taken off the board, who would you go next with the number 3 overall pick?
So I'm tempted here to go explosive running back, which both Kamara and McCaffrey are. And I think that I would have a next to unstoppable offense with Mahomes and one of those Swiss Army knife running backs who can really do everything. They can act as a running back or a receiver, especially McCaffrey. But I think that I'm going to take the savvy decision to go edge rusher here and go with a familiar name that we just discussed, which is Myles Garrett. I think that I think that Myles Garrett was a great number 1 overall pick, especially because at the time it was seemingly a no-brainer for the Browns to take him, and I think they made the right decision at the time to draft him, given what we knew about Mahomes and Watson and Trubisky. I think that it was the right decision to go with the can't-miss edge rusher. And he has been nothing but incredible since he's been in the NFL. He's had 13.5 sacks in 2018, 10 sacks in 2019. I think that Clowney last year, Davis Clowney, only had 3 sacks. So it just shows you how when you're the focal point of a defense, you're going to get double covered. And he still has managed to rack up good numbers. I think that unfortunately he'll be known to the modest fan for a while because of the fight that he got into with Mason Rudolph.
Right, of course.
And obviously was suspended through last season, which is why he only had 10 sacks and didn't build on his 13.5 from 2018. but he is just an incredible player, and I think that this will be the exception to the rule throughout his career, this fight. And so I think that he'll continue to have a great career for the Browns.
I think that's a solid pick, a great spot there. Obviously, Myles Garrett dropping 2 spots from where he was at, drafted in 2017. But I think if we're, like we said, if this is a fantasy model, we're trying to rebuild a team, that's a great way to get defense going. So if I had the number 4 pick, I think the thing is, if you take Myles Garrett off the board there, I believe there's a lot of talented defense, which I'm going to get to later in my picks. But for me, if I'm going to go and try and pair with Deshaun Watson, a talented player that would destroy on offense, the player that comes to mind right away, obviously, with so far his career numbers, he has over 2,920 yards rushing, and he has over 2,523 yards receiving. And I want to make sure I get that right of career, or is that which year is that one? No, yeah, sorry, that is the career rushing. I'm going to go with Christian McCaffrey. 2018, over 1,000 yards rushing. 2019, over 1,000 yards rushing. And last year in 2019, over 1,000 yards receiving. I think he would be insane with Deshaun Watson. You could run so many play action. You could have the RPO set up in there. I think the ability to run outside the pocket with the 2 players and have them both as a receiving and rushing threat, that makes your offense the top offense in the league right there with that pairing.
I love that pick. And here's what I'll say. I'll build off of what you said about McCaffrey. And I think this is important to note because in today's NFL, there's a lot of talk about what the value of a running back actually is.
Right.
What you'll hear from people is that running backs are not nearly as valuable as positions like edge rusher, or even as valuable as skill positions such as wide receiver. And so what they say is that running backs have a short shelf life. Anybody can do the job of running back. You just give them the ball 20 times per game. They run into a pile. They last 5 years, and then you get another one in the 3rd round, or the 4th round, or even later of drafts. And I think that does apply to average running backs in the NFL.
Right.
That you can find them easily. You don't want to pay $8 million or $12 million a year to a running back you sign in free agency who had a couple of good years, because you could just draft one who can run into a pile and get you a few yards per carry. But with McCaffrey, I think that it's important to note that he's not just a running back. He is a running back. He is a receiver, and this is true for a lot of the best running backs. They're multi-asset skill position players who can do a lot of things. McCaffrey is just a great all-around football player, and last year he was the Panthers' offense.
Exactly.
He touched the ball 30 times per game, had a very efficient season given that huge volume, and I think that if you were to pay him what he actually deserved last season, it would have been like $30 million to $40 million a year. I mean, like, you're talking quarterback
Absolutely.
money on the type of impact he had on his team.
Yep.
And so, listen, people say, oh, they'll burn out early, but I think if you manage a running back's reps and you don't overload them with touches, I think that they can have long careers as long as you treat them like wisely. And I think that's important to note, because people, running backs like Gurley who have gotten injured, they were run to the ground by their previous team. So
yeah, exactly. And and that's me. And those guys are power runners. And the thing is, McCaffrey's power, but he's also got elusiveness, so he can really get speed outside the pocket, which I think allows him to last longer. So then, now that we've gone through 4 picks, so we go to the 5th pick. You have so far taken Patrick Mahomes, and you have the edge rusher Myles Garrett. So who do you take now with the 5th overall pick?
So I was worried that during your last selection, as you talked about offensive talent, I was worried that you were going to take my guy, who I think is extremely valuable, and that is George Kittle, who went, I think, 146 overall to the Niners, 5th round pick.
Yep.
And just has been absolutely incredible since entering the league. He has 10 touchdowns, 2,400 total yards the last 2 seasons. But I think what makes him so special is his all-around utility as a blocker. Right. And I think that he has made the Niners look so much better than they are. When you look at last season, it was not just him. The whole block scheme of the Niners was very talented. But every running back that the Niners put behind that line and Kittle would have 7-8 yards per carry in some games. And so I think that really attributes how valuable Kittle was for the offense, not just as a pass catcher, but also as a blocker.
100%. I mean, it's incredible to see how he became the number 1 receiving threat on that team. He's also able to block. He's able to bring also, I think, a leadership quality to that team where people look towards him as guidance, as well as kind of the energy and the personality to that locker room. It really is incredible going 5th round overall, and then to jump up to be in the elite conversation of tight ends with your Kelce's, with your Ertz. It's fascinating, and get to the Super Bowl run that way. And he plays with grit. He gets injured. He still plays hard. It really an excellent pick and great heart to your team. So I'll go over again to the people since we've gone through 5 picks. With the number 1 overall pick, Dillon, you went with Patrick Mahomes. Number 2, we had Deshaun Watson on my team. Number 3, you went with Myles Garrett to form up the defense and get that going. Number 4, I went with Christian McCaffrey to solidify the offense. Number 5, you went George Kittle to give those weapons to Patrick Mahomes. So I will then go with the 6th pick. I'm going to go with defense. I as well am going to go edge rusher because of the value of them now in the NFL. And I'm going to go with someone who I think is a strong family name, but has been dominating in the league so far, especially with the amount of sacks he has gotten over his 3 years. And that is TJ Watt with 34.5 sacks so far in his career. I think he would be valuable on any team he goes to. And especially on this team, as we're starting to build a defense around, I'm happy to have him anchor my defense. And I just want to point again, 2018. So I said 34.5 sacks. 2018, 13 sacks. 2019, 14.5. The dude is an absolute beast.
He has sneaky, huge numbers. I mean,
oh yeah,
he is a stat producer. He's had an incredible career so far. I cannot fault you for that pick at all.
That's mean. I think he would be great to solidify my defense all the way. So I'd say that's 6. Where would you go now with pick 7 on your team, Dillon?
So I want to make sure I lock down some defensive help here because Garrett can't do it all alone.
Sure.
And there's a couple of defensive backs that I'm thinking about here, and I don't think you could go wrong with either. But I'm going to take Saints cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, who has been he was Offensive Rookie of the Year in his rookie season. So, I mean, he's been great since game 1. But 8 career picks, and he is just a true number 1 cornerback, which is obviously crucial in today's NFL to have someone that can lock down the other team's number 1. And I think that given the opponents that Lattimore has faced in his division the last few years, I think that he is fully equipped to be the number 1 corner for my team.
Yeah, that's me thinking. He goes against Julio Jones twice a year. He's going against the Bucs because of the NFC South with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans twice a year. And if you look at stats, he has a fit like when thrown against. When people are throwing towards him, it's only a 50% completion he's averaging over 3 years, which is incredible to think that he's able to stop that many passes. So I think that's a great pick. I had him on my big board of all the names at 11, just kind of sharing. And I will say, because you just started entering the DB space for this draft, it is amazing how deep this draft was at the defensive back position.
Absolutely.
Like, it's insane. I'm kind of sad because I remember Lattimore was a big pick the Eagles wanted to get. But thinking of all the struggles we've had at cornerback, and we couldn't land one of these guys. Oh.
I was actually talking to a good friend of mine, Carlo Maccarecci, recently, who's obviously, as you know, a big Eagles fan.
Yep.
And he was telling me about how he believes that Derek Barnett will live up to the potential that he had in his rookie season, that he's been better than the numbers suggest. But I was saying that there were very, very talented cornerbacks, namely Marlon Humphrey and Malik Hooker, that were available that went the 2 picks after the Eagles took 100%. Derek Barnett. And I think that those would have been huge picks for the Eagles because I think Barnett is a little bit redundant right now behind what is already a very stout Eagles line that they've built on in free agency. And I think that they really could use a young lockdown cornerback or a field general safety.
I agree, and I think it's just one of those things where you hope Barnett works as the defensive line gets older and he's young and becomes kind of the staple of that line, that then it comes through. But absolutely, I think the problem is the Eagles can never draft DBs well, ever, and they always go for free agency in that case. All right, so now I'm on to I'm on 7. I'm pick 7. Correct?
Yes, you are pick 7. No, I think you're
pick
6.
8. I'm 8. Sorry.
You're 8? Oh, okay.
We've gone through 7 picks. Now we're on to 8. Right. So I'm going to go same with you. I also believe I need to shore up that defense. I think you need to get talented cornerback help when you can. I think I'm going to go with the Bills' talented Tre'Davious White. I think he's been killing it. 12 interceptions over his career so far. Again, only 50% completion average when thrown to. So I think it's a talent is there, and he's racking up the tackles 145. I'd be happy to have Tre'Davious White on my DB team.
That's a great pick. Tre'Davious White is an incredible young corner for the Bills, and I'm actually very glad that you saved me my favorite safety
I know.
in this
It was
draft
tough. It was tough, but I had to go
because
cornerback.
I can't blame you because I think that cornerback as a position does have marginally more value than the safety position does.
Right.
But having already taken a quarterback and with the 9th overall pick, I am very happy to select Jamal Adams,
Of
who has
course.
been just an absolute stud for the Jets. One of their few great first-round picks they've made in the last decade. And this is huge for them because I think that he's going to really grow with the team as long as they can keep him happy amidst all the losing that he has been around. He has a tackle machine, 273 career tackles, 12 sacks as a safety, a couple of picks. But, I mean, no one throws near him anyways because he's just so good.
And that's the thing, too, is I feel like safeties don't always get the picks, right, because they're kind of floating around. A lot of times the cornerbacks are going to have the higher stat for the picks just because unless you're a Darrelle Revis who is just a freak in the zone. But in general, you're going to get a lot of those wins on the man-to-man coverage. But I think the number you said with the 273 tackles is insane. And on top of that, 210 solo tackles. Like, it's incredible what this guy has been able to produce. And he has 12 sacks. So you're able to bring him up. You can have him on the blitz. He is a physical player. And that's what I think you always need to look for in a safety. And I agree. The Jets, if they lose Jamal Adams, that's going to be a huge blow to that organization. But I think on any team, Jamal Adams is a great, great fit.
This is actually something I find to be really interesting about like the way that the safety position has evolved in today's NFL and to how crucial it is now. I mean, you're seeing these new era safeties that are basically just safety by name, but they're all around defenders that are safety, linebackers, coverage players. They can cover in man or zone or rush the passer, and I think that's what you have guys like Jamal Adams who are doing it right now. But you also have guys like Isaiah Simmons whose draft stock has risen because you see what these guys like Jamal Adams can do when they get the NFL.
Totally agree. So then I'm going on the offensive side of the ball again. I've got at least, I think, 2 defensive players to hold it down. I need someone for Deshaun Watson to throw to. And so I'm going to go with someone that was completely underdrafted in this one, someone that I think deserved to be higher up in the draft board. And I'm trying to figure out where we went. All right, went late 2nd round. I'm going to go with the explosive Juju Smith-Schuster, who I think has a long way of still talent to go. And I'm going to leave another wide receiver for you to pick if you want later on, who I love, obviously, as you know. But with a 10th overall, I'm going to go Juju Smith-Schuster for sure. And I want to get the numbers right, so I'm going to pull up this page again. So in 2018, so let's see this progression. He starts off rookie season with 917 yards, almost getting it through 1,000 yards. He then moves the next year of 1,426 yards. Now, we did see the dip to just 500 yards last year, but that is, of course, due to quarterback issues, having obviously, the cycling of injuries and then the backups and the players that weren't good. So I'll toss it off as a bad year. But in general, the guy has been very productive with 7 TDs both years, his first 2 years, and getting close to 1,000 yards. I think he would be excellent for Deshaun Watson to really open the field with.
Oh, yeah. Juju has been great for the Steelers and was great for Ben Roethlisberger, who he really developed a good connection with. And he did a great job replacing Antonio Brown. Obviously, it was a tough season last year, given the injury to Big Ben and the inconsistent quarterback play that replaced Big Ben in Pittsburgh. So I think that Juju is a lot better than the numbers indicate from last year, and his previous 2 seasons are more indicative of what he can really do.
100%. So then if I take Juju at 10, where are you going with the 11th round pick? 11th pick.
I'm going to go with Chris Godwin, who you so kindly left for me.
I thought you would.
Godwin has been incredible for the Bucs, and the last year really was what he really stepped up and had that breakout season.
That was his coming out party for sure.
Yeah, it really was. And 1,333 yards. And it's important to note that he had more than 1,300 yards next to Mike Evans, who is your typical stud number 1 wide receiver, so who's able to carve out a role for himself as just an explosive receiver who can take a slant route to the house. Runs great routes, physical traits are incredible, and so he's going to be a very valuable weapon for Tom Brady.
Yeah, I think again, it's amazing that Tom Brady gets to have both him and Mike Evans on a team. It just seems unfair, and not to mention, I was looking at when I was doing research before an episode. They have Perryman as like their third wide receiver, which is not like he's a stud, but like you have even more speed out there. It's just ridiculous to think what the Bucs will have.
Did they bring Perryman back? I think he's a free agent still, or is...
I don't know if he bring. All right, so that's what I mean. I'm looking at their roster last year and ended up with Perryman. I imagine that he has. I don't believe he's been picked up by anyone. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I would think they'd sign him. They'd bring him to training camp to at least see if he could fill in a third spot and pay him, low if no one picks him up.
I think the Jets signed him. Yeah, a week ago the Jets
took him away.
Perriman.
Never mind.
Yeah.
We'll see who picks that third spot then for the Bucs. That'll be
I
interesting.
think that Perriman showed that if he's given the opportunity, he might be able, because he was drafted. I think he's a first-round pick, and so I think that he's with last year's production. When I think Evans was out, I think he showed that he deserved a chance to see if he can be a number one guy. But we'll see. But I mean, obviously last year he had a hard time carving out a role when both Godwin and Evans were healthy, and O.J. Howard as well.
Exactly. So then I have the 12th overall pick, and with the 12th overall pick, I'm kind of looking through. I feel like I've got my offense down. I want to go back to defense, and a defensive player who I think has really started to make some noise and is a good safety that I think would fill in excellent for this team. Eddie Jackson. I'm going to go with him with my 12th overall pick to fill in that safety role. Again, 147 solo tackles. He's proven to be a physical guy over these last 3 years. 10 interceptions. So even against Jamal Adams, he's improving the interception, showing that he can play his good zone defense out there. When thrown to 50 to 53% completion rate. So I think that Eddie Jackson is a good person to just fill in. He's going to be a solid player. And if you build around him, he's going to complement anyone else around the field because he can play zone. He can really be the center fielder that you need out there. So I'm going to go with Eddie Jackson at 12.
I like that. Jackson is a big player. He always seems to find the end zone.
That's what I mean. He can return the ball. I mean, obviously return the ball. He is an excellent. I think he just has great vision. I think he has good instincts for the game out there in the deep part of the field. So that's where I would go at 12. Going to you, sir, at 13. Who do you have?
So I have to admit, I kind of, given the format of this draft, I kind of cheated the system a little bit. Having you taken McCaffrey so early, I thought to myself that I could sit on my stud running back, who I would have taken earlier if I was forced to. And I think that Alvin Kamara, Saints running back.
Look at that value at 13.
At 13, I got great value for my stud running back. And I wasn't sure. I said, is Chad going to go for the double running back and steal my guy?
Couldn't do it.
But yeah, Kamara has shown that as the number one guy. I mean, I think his first and second year he was sharing the ball with Mark Ingram. But once he was given the keys, I think he really showed that he can be one of the best running backs in football. And it's similar. He's kind of like a poor man's version of McCaffrey because it's not just the running that shows how much value he adds, but it's the receiving. So each year he's had at least 500 receiving yards. I think he's averaged about 700. 14 touchdowns in 2018, rushing alone 18 total. He's had 37 touchdowns total in his 3 years. So he just shows that he is able to find the end zone and can be one of the best running backs in the league.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, Alvin Kamara, it's incredible. I mean, I, of course, had my running back, so I wasn't going to go with him. But the thing, you can get them that late. And just seeing again, I think Alvin Kamara was a third. Yeah, I got to pull this up. Third round pick. Yes, number 67 overall. Third round pick. The running backs that went before him include Leonard Fournette, obviously Christian McCaffrey. I believe Joe Mixon is in the mix there on that one.
All good players.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook and Joe Mixon. So all good players, but Alvin Kamara, who is shown to be a complete all-star, drafted very late. But so I think a great fit to any team there.
Yeah, a lot of good running backs in this class.
Absolutely. All right, so then I get the 14th overall pick, and I'm trying to think again where I want to go with this. I think I've built out a pretty solid starting offense. I'm starting to get in some defense, I think, and cover anyone out there. I'm going to give my team, again, some help on – oh, man, this is tough for the 14th overall. Where do I want to go with this one? I'm going to get a tight end who I think has proven that he can be solid in this league. Before I decide I'm going to do that. Nope, I'm switching up. I'm going to go defense again. I believe this is deep, this cornerback class. I want to continue to keep talent on there because I think I'm going to go with the last pick I know I'll go with. But I'm going to go with Adoree Jackson, and I want to put him on the cornerback squad because I know from a team that I've watched all year that has defensive struggles, you can't win championships without good defense. You can't win championships without good coverage in the DB position. I think Adoree Jackson, with his 1 year's best of 50% completion when thrown to, he has 167 tackles and 2 interceptions. I think he's shown to be talented. I want to shore up that defense in front. I was thinking about naming O.J. Howard, but I think I can fill the tight end spot fine without him. So I'm going to go with 14, Adoree Jackson.
Got a couple of good corners in that backfield.
That's what I mean. I was thinking about just going full heavy on defense, trying to make the most all-star defense I could get out there.
You're going to need it with Patrick Mahomes starting Chris Godwin and Alvin Kamara.
Ain't that the truth?
All right, so I'm glad you left him on the board for me because, like you said, you need a good defense to win championships, but you need a good line if you're going to go and stop the edge rusher on that opposing defense. And so I'm going to take O-lineman Ryan Ramczyk.
Yeah,
I think I said that correctly, Ramczyk.
I can't tell if it's Ramczyk or Ramczyk, but I agree. Also, a stellar pick.
Starts with Ram, ends with X, so something like in the middle I can figure it out. But he has been incredible for the Saints. He has anchored the left tackle spot for them and has given Drew Brees time to find guys such as Michael Thomas downfield or even Alvin Kamara. So I think that pairing Kamara, Mahomes, and Ramczyk together with Kittle gives me a good run pass balance, and I'll be able to do whatever I want out there.
That's it's a solid pick. He was first team All-Pro in 2019, second team All-Pro in 2018. The dude just is a solid tackle out there, and you need that obviously to protect your quarterback to give him the time. He also has proven to be a stellar run blocker, and even because you see the Saints throwing a lot of screens, they do get out on the edges and they're able to block downfield. I think that is a great pick to go with your offense. And what I'm going to do is, just so we have an even amount of picks for both of us, I'm going to take a 16th pick. I know we said stop at 15, but I'll go 16. And I'm going to do, just to make this interesting, is I'm going to go with wide receiver, and I'm going to go with someone I believe is undervalued here and should be getting a lot more attention as he grows and becomes better. And at 16, I'm going Kenny Galladay, because Galladay has had 2,730 yards, 160 out of 163 receptions. That's it. And he has 14 touchdowns. I think he would be great going deep with Deshaun Watson throwing to him. I'd love to see that happen. And I know I don't have an offensive line here. Hopefully we could build that through the free agency. But I think you have a talented wide receiver, running back, and quarterback that could be a threat to anyone in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he has all the physical traits and has now put up 2 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons and seemingly many more to come. And, I think that's a good pick. He's definitely a number 1 wide receiver.
So I think what I'll do now is I'm just going to run through again what we picked in this fantasy draft through 16 picks using the draft class of 2017. We start off again with the number 1 overall pick going to Patrick Mahomes. Number 2 came in with Deshaun Watson. So hitting it off with our quarterbacks to build a strong starting team right there. Number 3, going to Dillon's team again, Myles Garrett to start and building that defense. Number 4, Christian McCaffrey, pairing Deshaun Watson and McCaffrey together. Number 5, George Kittle, getting that tight end help. Number 6, I picked TJ Watt. 7, Marshawn Lattimore. 8, Tre'Davious White. 9, Jamal Adams, a very heavy DB section of the draft right there. Number 10, Juju Smith-Schuster. Number 11, Chris Godwin, as we started making sure we filled in those wide receiver spots. Number 12, we had ourselves Eddie Jackson. Number 13, Alvin Kamara with the greatest value pick of the draft. Number 14, Adoree Jackson. Number 15, Ryan Ramczyk, if we get that ever right. And rounding it off with number 16, Kenny Galladay. So that was our draft. And I want to say that was a great draft, Dillon. I appreciate you coming on and doing that with me. I want to also notable mentions that we did not pick up in the top 16 who did go in the first round. Those include Dalvin Cook. It also had O.J. Howard, which we discussed. Leonard Fournette, and then later on in the draft, which we also didn't get to, that were talented players later on in the second, third draft, Marcus Williams for the Saints, who is famous for obviously missing the tackle on what's
Stephon
his name?
Diggs.
Thank you, Diggs. I was gonna call him Tiggs. I was like, nope, that's not right. As well as Marlon Humphrey, we saw there, Chidobe Awuzie, and I'm trying to see who else, and Cooper Kupp. So all these guys were out there, yeah, and we didn't pick them, but that, again, a deep class in 2017.
Great class. Very, very heavy at the top, too. A lot of star power.
It really is. It's impressive to see. And like I said, very deep in the DB spot, also very talented wide receiver and running back, and some really skilled quarterbacks out there. It's impressive.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Perhaps the best two in the league in coming years.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we can try and compare the class with Wentz, Goff, and obviously down in Dallas with
Prescott. I think that
man.
this.
I'm having a bad day with that.
I think that this class blows that one away, and any other that you can really bring up. I mean, when you have Mahomes by himself, really could just do damage on any other comparative draft class. But with Watson as well, who has just become a superstar down in Texas, I think that this draft class will be the best draft class of the decade, just because of how successful the headliners have been.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I mean, it's just fun to do it and kind of reimagine again the amount of talent that's pooled in different areas and trying to see, like, if you were a GM, how you could build with so many amazing players and having 2020 hindsight. So I do like doing these exercises. It's really a blast.
It's always fun if you are maybe in the back of the first round or you made a great pick, but if you are the Bears, then you're probably thinking that this is a very painful exercise that needs not be repeated.
Just imagine, man. I mean, if they had just gone with either Mahomes or Watson, how different that Bears offense would be.
Or just not trading their future for Mitchell Trubisky. I mean, it was pouring salt in the wound.
There's a lot they could have done to make that better. Well, Dillon, I want to say thank you for coming on and being a part of this. Thank you for doing the 2017 redraft, getting your little GM cap on and trying to do this the fantasy way. It is always a blast having you on to talk football, to talk Giants, talk NFC East, talk all things NFL. While we're going through this whole social distancing thing, this is a great piece of content that I'm able to give to listeners and viewers out there. So I really just want to thank you for coming on again.
Thank you for having me. I know it was very easy to fit you in my schedule, which has been wide open the past month.
We're free.
So I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. No, really do appreciate it, Dillon. So again, everyone, thank you so much for listening to this special, obviously the self-isolation episode. We are going to continue to bring out little bits of content like this as this continues on. We will have a new episode next week. This episode, if you're listening to now, of course, aired on Monday at 7 p.m. That is when we'll try and release all the rest of our content. If you want to stay up to date with us on when we're going to release new stuff as well as small clips on Instagram, be sure to follow at Chadburn Show on Instagram. You can also check us out on YouTube, the Chadburn Show. We also have a Facebook page with updates there as well. You can follow and subscribe to both those pages. If you have any questions or would like to reach out to us, you reach out to chadburn.show@gmail.com. Again, that is chadburn.show@gmail.com. I have been going around doing the circuit, being guests on other people's podcasts, so listen to those as well. We will keep those on the Instagram page for you to check out. But as always, we really appreciate you listening in. Everyone listening, please stay safe, stay healthy. Be sure to keep your distance so that we can get rid of this COVID-19 and sports can come back and life can go back to normalcy and we can go back to being happy. But as always, thank you for listening into the show. Until next time, have a good evening and good night.